On the most photographed street in America, the tallest, the priciest the towers ever built are quietly coming apart. Facades cracking, whole floors dark, apartments reselling for tens of millions less than they cost. Except one. One building on this street did the exact opposite. Its owners have made money. And here's the part that should stop you. The market didn't do this. Not the pandemic, not interest rates, not some crash. Look closely at each tower that failed, and the wound is self-inflicted. A choice its own developer made years before any downturn. One building made the opposite choices, and it made them on purpose. So how did one building, same street, same buyers, same market, same pandemic, do the exact opposite of all of them? That's the whole story, and it starts with what the others got wrong. Before any claim about which buildings failed, this video has to define failure, because every video on this subject slides between definitions without admitting it. 4 questions. Did the developer get into financial trouble? Did buyers lose money reselling? Was the building constructed properly? And does anyone actually live there? The 6 towers here are 157, 432 Park Avenue, 111 West 57th, Central Park Tower, 53 West 53rd, and 220 Central Park South. 2 others get counted on the rows sometimes, 252 East 57th and 520 Park Avenue. Both are shorter, neither is a super tall, neither is in this comparison. Though one of them comes back later, and not for the reason you'd expect. And on that 4th question, does anyone actually live there, the building that wins every other column is the worst one on the street. 157. Gary Barnett's Extel development completed the sponsor sellout in February 2026, an effort Barnett described as almost 30 years of work. But selling out is not the same as winning. Unit 80 recorded a deed at $53 million in 2014 and another at $20.4 million in 2022. Both are public record. The buyer who paid $53 million got back less than 40 cents on the dollar 8 years later. 432 Park Avenue. The Condo Board's 2021 complaint alleged more than 1,500 defects. Noise, flooding, elevator failures, cracks through the facade. In 2025, it filed again, seeking $165 million and alleging the developers concealed the cracking from buyers. This June, an appellate court rejected Harry Maclow's bid to make the board cover his legal costs. The sponsor's defense is that the board's own engineers certified the facade. And then the detail that reframes everything. Maclow's own arbitration petition states that CIM turned roughly $900 million in profit here. The building, with 1,500 alleged defects and litigation still live in the courts, made its developer $900 million. 111 West 57th, the Steinway Tower. Mezzanine debt killed this one. A lender moved to foreclose, the equity partner was wiped out, and AIM-based corporation has been litigating over it ever since. The building only neared sellout in April 2026. Remember mezzanine debt. One developer on this street paid $15 million in cash specifically to avoid it. Central Park Tower. JP Morgan provided a $500 million inventory loan collateralized by 87 unsold apartments, roughly half the building pledged as security just to keep operations running. The original mezzanine financing carried 14% interest. By March 2025, Barnett had raised about $270 million from Tel Aviv Stock Exchange bondholders, secured by a first lien on 18 unsold units. The revenue trajectory in that filing? $505.5 million in 2022, $338 million in 2023, $244.5 million across the first 3 quarters of 2024. Those are numbers Barnett's team filed with Israeli bondholders to raise capital against a building he was trying to sell in New York. 53 West 53rd. Hines filed amendments with the New York Attorney General lowering the sellout by more than 12% to $2.1 billion, more than $167 million in price cuts within 4 years of launch. Hines and Goldman Sachs went into arbitration over how much further to go. The structural columns running through the window openings, a consequence of Jean Nouvel's load-bearing design, cut into the views the pricing had assumed. About 15% of the 145 units were under contract nearly 4 years in. Start with the site, because part of what happened here is geography, not genius, and saying that first makes everything after it harder to dismiss. 220 Central Park South assembled a through-block lot of 27,608 square feet, 75 feet of direct frontage on Central Park South, 200 feet on West 58th Street. Getting it took years and a war with a neighboring developer. Vornado eventually paid Extel $194 million for a parking garage and the development rights attached to it. What that bought was position. The super talls on 57th Street look down on the park from a block away at an angle. This one sits on it, nothing between the facade and the tree line, permanently, because no building will ever go up in Central Park. No amount of developer skill manufactures that. Some of the win is simply the lot. Then the design, and this is the part most people get wrong. 220 Central Park South was originally conceived as a glass tower designed by Pelly Clark Pelly. By late 2013, Vornado had thrown that out and hired Robert A.M. Stern instead. What got built is silvery Alabama limestone, a 70-story tower on 58th Street joined to an 18-story villa on Central Park South. Punched windows rather than curtain wall. Most of the 118 apartments laid out as duplexes with elevator landings opening straight into the unit. At 952 feet, it never even crossed the 984-foot line that makes a building a super tall. Every rival on the street did. It didn't need to. The structural core was pushed to the southern perimeter and the interior columns eliminated, which is what makes those floor plans possible. An 1,100-ton tuned mass damper near the summit works like a car's shock absorber against the oscillation wind induces in a tall, slender building. The sway is designed. It is not a defect. And then the way it was sold. No public listings before buyers were approached. No marketing office. Buyers hand-selected. No shared corridors because the elevator opens into the apartment. Every one of those is a selling feature and an emptiness feature at the same time. The discretion that made it sell is what made it empty. This wasn't incidental to the product. It was the product. On Monday, September 28, 2015, Vornado announced two things at once. It upsized its existing construction loan from the Bank of China, a $600 million facility taken out in March 2014, by another $350 million to $950 million, at LIBOR plus 2%, maturing in 2020. And in the same announcement, it walked away from a mezzanine loan it had lined up, paying a $15 million fee to cancel the commitment rather than draw it. $15 million in cash to not borrow money. Mezzanine debt is what a developer takes when the senior loan doesn't cover the project. It sits behind the mortgage. It costs far more, and if it defaults, the lender takes the equity rather than the building. It's the instrument that wiped out the investors at the Steinway Tower, and the one Barnett was paying 14% on at Central Park Tower. Roth paid to never touch it. By July 2019, the loan was repaid in full, and the building was debt-free. Vornado also calls this the most successful condo project anywhere, a claim that traces back to Vornado, and one you don't have to take. Because the interesting part isn't what's in the record here, it's what isn't. No foreclosure, no emergency loan against unsold apartments, and no price cut. Vornado's filings with the Attorney General show the projected sellout going up over time, from just under $3 billion to about $3.4 billion, never down. There is one lawsuit at 220 Central Park South, but notice who's suing. It's not the buyers, and it's not the condo board. It's the landmarked co-op next door, claiming the excavation twisted its centrally old building and asking for about $3 million. Compare that to 432 Park, where the owners are suing their own developer for $165. At the winner, the only people in court are the neighbors. Those are the absences. And on this street, the absences are the story. One building proves nothing. Two is a coincidence. Stern and this formula have been run 3 times, and the third run is the interesting one. 15 Central Park West, completed 2008. Same limestone, same pre-war language, same developers. It cost about the same to build as Roth's loan on 220 CPS, roughly $950 million, and sold out for around $2 billion in 18 months. By City Realty's rankings, it's outperformed 157 and 432 Park on resale ever since. It isn't on Billionaires Row. It's 3 blocks up on the Upper West Side. Then 520 Park Avenue. Same architect, same developer, same limestone. Finished in 2018, a year before 220 Central Park South, 8 blocks east. It did not work. The penthouse asked $130 million, got split in 2, and sold for $79 million and $34.5 million. James Dyson closed $9 million under asking. 4 resales in 8 years in a 35-unit building, one of them to an acquaintance of the seller, at a loss. And as of April 2026, both units traded since a buyer sued the developer sold for less than the owners paid. Same architect, same stone, same playbook, 8 blocks east, and it lost money. Which means the limestone was never the cause. Neither was stone. What the winning building had that 520 Park didn't was 75 feet of frontage on Central Park, and a construction loan at LIBOR +2, while the competition paid 14% on mezzanine debt. And it wasn't just oversupply before anyone says it. 220 Central Park South sat in the same block and delivered into the same market. Oversupply hit all 6 equally, which is exactly why it can't be what separated them. Property tax rules are not why anyone clicked on this video, but it's important to explain it. A house is simple. The city estimates what it would sell for and you pay a percentage of that. An apartment isn't. State law forbids the city from using the sale price on a condominium. It has to be valued as though it were a rental building. What could this collect in rent, working backwards from rents at ordinary buildings nearby? That rule was written in the early 1980s for a city where a $100 million apartment did not exist. And nobody rents a $200 million apartment, so there's no rent to look at. Which is how you get this. Griffin paid $238 million. On the city's books for this tax year, that apartment is worth $15.5 million. His property tax bill is $858,000, about 1/3 of 1% of what he paid. Now, the other end of the same city. The Wall Street Journal found a retired sanitation worker on Staten Island, a 2,600 square foot house valued by the city at under $870,000, paying an effective rate of about 1.2%, a bill near $10,450. The apartment is worth roughly 270 times the house. The man in the house pays more than 3 times the rate. Nobody cheated. That is simply what the formula produces when you apply a rental income rule to a building nobody rents. In 2014, then State Senator Brad Hoylman-Siegel introduced a tax on non-primary residences in New York City, a pied-à-terre tax, from the French for a home you keep for occasional use. It went nowhere. In January 2019, Griffin's purchase broke in the press and the idea came back. Reporting at the time credits that sale directly. It died again under real estate lobbying. Then, in November 2025, New York elected Zoyan Mamdani, a self-described socialist, as mayor. In April 2026, Mamdani and Governor Hochul announced the tax together, and Mamdani filmed the announcement standing on the sidewalk outside 220 Central Park South, naming Griffin directly. Griffin's firm hit back hard. He said he felt doxed and called it a dangerous stunt. His objection has a point worth stating. His purchase price, the city's valuation of the apartment, and his ownership of it had all been sitting in public files for years. New York has required property ownership to be public record since 1830. The bill passed the state legislature on May 27, 2026. Hochul signed it the next day. It took effect July 1st and expires in 2031 unless renewed. And here is the part that matters, because it is not a tax on being rich. It's a surcharge on homes that are not your primary residence, a tax on apartments nobody lives in. 220 Central Park South is the most successful building of apartments nobody lives in ever constructed. That was not a side effect. That was the product. Griffin's bill goes from $858,000 to roughly $1.87 million in the first 2 years. And in 2028, when the city moves apartment valuations toward what they actually sell for, to just under $4 million. The building that won made itself the argument for the tax that now taxes it. New York is late to this. Vancouver has taxed empty homes since 2017 and Toronto since 2022, both at 3% of assessed value. Paris adds a 60% surcharge on second homes. Singapore charges foreign buyers 60% stamp duty on any residential purchase at all. It can work. Vancouver's empty home rate fell to 0.49% in 2024, the lowest since its tax began. It can also be undone. Canada killed its national version in November 2025. These buildings were engineered to behave like cash. No corridors, no neighbors, no reason to ever show up. That is what made them sell, and it's what made them a target. Whether it changes anything, we'll know when the first bills land in January. Of the 4 measures, developer profit, buyer profit, build quality, or whether anyone actually lives there, which one should count? Share in the comments. And if you watched it, make sure to subscribe for more mega build stories. Thanks for watching it, and see you in the next one.